Welcome to Thank you, Dolly. Welcome to Pukar Foundation's Wellness Dialogue session on understanding men's health, navigating masculinity, and embracing mental wellness for men. Every month we have been doing this now for over a year. We bring topics related to mental wellness. We have had empathy, we've had listening, positive mindset, overcoming grief, relationships, a lot of different topics. But this particular one has been on our minds for a while, and I'm so glad it's happening today. It's a very, very important topic. Um, our sessions aim to not just talk about theory, which I think there's enough of everywhere. We would like to bring to you skills and information that you can use in your everyday life to make changes either for yourself or for others. So that's the aim of these sessions. So thank you again for joining. Before we jump into the session, I would like to introduce Pokar and then the topic and then our speaker for the day. Thank you, Arun, for being here. We are so happy to have you. So Pokar
Happy to be
Foundation
here.
is, thank you.
Happy to be here.
Wonderful. Pokar Foundation is a volunteer-driven emotional support helpline. It provides free, confidential, non-judgmental emotional support to anyone feeling stressed, depressed, or suicidal. I cannot emphasize how important this is, especially in today's times, and how many lives it touches. We will be sharing the details of the foundation on chat, so feel free to share it freely and widely in your groups. You never know who needs it. Um, we've all been through experiences that help us understand the importance of just pure non-judgmental listening. We are open every day from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We have a growing volunteer base who's doing the wonderful job of listening. We will put the details in the chat during the session. Before I introduce Arun, I want to take a minute to talk about this topic. Like I said, this has been one of the topics that we've had on our minds for a while. And the first thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about this was all the phrases that we use for men, towards men, talking to boys, man up, boys don't cry, don't be a girl, stop acting like a sissy, real men don't talk about feelings, crying is for weaklings. I'm sure we've all heard of this, um, from either side. Either we've said it, heard it being said, or been on the receiving end. And between all of this, I think men's mental health has been a topic that has remained in the shadows, unspoken, overlooked, and often dismissed as if it doesn't exist, right? For generations, we have spoken about strength defined as silence, pushing through, getting through, and vulnerability as a weakness. This webinar, I think we would like to make that shift, at least in our own minds, put light on what has been ignored, break that silence, and open up possibly a compassionate conversation around this topic. I'm super excited, and I'm so glad, Arun, you're here to speak about it. I think some of you already know Arun. I saw a nice friendly discussion before the session started, which is nice to see. Arun currently works with international trade at Exemplay. He's a corporate leader with 2 decades of marketing and product experience. He's an avid reader, as you might have heard his friends talk about him right now, and ultra marathoner. He has spent last 5 years reflecting on his own idea of masculinity. For me, I mean, listening to him is not just going to bring, his professional wisdom, but also I feel like a deep lived understanding of the realities around men's mental health. That's what I'm really keen on listening to from you, Arun. And I'm sure that's true for all of us here as well. As a corporate leader, you must have witnessed firsthand, silent struggles behind boardroom doors or busy schedules or multiple roles that we play. I'm looking forward to hearing your insights from your practical experience. So over to you, Arun. Arun will be speaking for a couple of minutes and then we will take questions towards the end. But if anyone has a burning question, please do put it in the chat and I'm sure he can address it. Thank you again, Arun, for being here and the floor is all yours.
Thanks, Anu. Hope to do justice to the topic. I'm also the last 5 years of reflection has brought me to this certain point where I look at the story of men's mental health a little differently, and I'm going to post that as a talking point and discussion point towards the second half. And what are the reasons why I reached that conclusion? And you know it's both research backed. It's a lived experience of how I applied a lot of those experiences in my own life. And also, I'll try to give some larger context around why a lot of the things around men's mental health are the way they are, right? And I'm going to specifically talk from a men's Indian man's perspective, and I'm going to tighten that context, right? And it's important to Western cultures have a very different eh, way their culture is structured, the way their societies are structured, the motivations are. The Indian man is positioned in a very different context, and it's important to recognize the context where they come from to be able to really understand who they are and what their stories are, right? So I'm just going to share the screen and put in a little bit of context about me. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Arun. We
Yeah.
can.
So again, a little bit of a story about me, right? I love my family, right? My mom, dad, my sisters, my two sisters, Dolly. Uh, it's something that gives me a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning. It gives me a reason to wake up every day, do the things that I do, uh, push myself, keep driving myself towards accomplishing more things. And that motivation and that drive is an essential part of who I am. Now, I do a bunch of other things, just like I put up here, right? I love doing ultra marathons because I use ultra marathons as a method to go out and push myself, right? And an ultra marathon is basically 50 kilometers, 30 kilometers when you're running through trails. And for hours together, you have nobody around you or nobody to motivate you, nobody to push you. And you find that you find things about yourself within that journey, right? So, and there's something about nature that's so empowering and powerful. So for me, I love that experience. Uh, I write. I try to put as much of the things that I think about in as much as simple words as possible. Most of what I write is in English. Unfortunately, I'd love to write in other languages, but पापी एजुकेशन सिस्टम ने मुझे ऐसे ही कॉन्फ़िगर कर दिया है, तो मेरा वो बायस है, राइट? Eventually, I want to at some point start writing in an Indian regional language, at least Hindi or Malayalam, which is my mother tongue, right? Uh, Now, I'm going to go into a little bit of a monologue from here. Now, here, I think some of this might sound a little controversial, but I think it's important to strike some of those emotional threads to get to the point that I want to get to, right? सवाल ये था कि what does it mean to be a man in India today? I think that was one of the questions that me and Dolly were discussing, right? How do you define the sense of masculinity? How do you define the identity? Uh, आदमी होने का मतलब क्या है? आदमी का रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी क्या है? उसकी उसका अस्तित्व क्या है? वो क्या करना चाहता है? And वो कहाँ से आता है? How is that person influenced to be the person who he is, right? Now, to expand the context a little, right? The last 100 years almost of feminist theory evolution has basically found one scapegoat. ये आदमी की ही गलती है. ठीक है. I wouldn't blame the feminists. Feminism in itself is about humanist values. It's about global equality for everybody. Unfortunately, हर कैंपेन में एक क्या कहते हैं, एक पिक्चर में एक हीरो को एक विलन चाहिए होता है, एंड जितना पावरफुल और वो विलन है, उसको उतना ही उसको उतना हीरो को उतना ही एफर्ट डालना पड़ता है उसको अटैक करने में। एंड वो विलन इतना विलिफाई हो जाता है कि विलन को हम फिर एक कॉमिकल तरीके से देखते हैं या एक मेनेसिंग तरीके से देखते हैं। इधर मोगैम्पो है या फिर यू नो इफ यू नो व्हाट इज दैट गोगो इन अंदाज अपना अपना, right? So this is the kind of I feel somewhere uh, एक टॉक्सिक मैस्कुलिनिटी का टर्म आता है, राइट? मेन मेन एंड ये एक पेट्रियार्की और ये सब टर्मिनोलॉजीज बहुत नए हैं, बट या आई मीन देयर इज दिस आइडिया ऑफ टॉक्सिक मैस्कुलिनिटी. इट मेक्स फॉर अ ग्रेट एनिमी. It is the ultimate conflict. It makes for a great movie premise, but the reality is almost always stuck, always in nuances. It's small things, right? uh, the average man looks very different. ठीक है? एक अब्यूज्ड 13-year-old बॉय है जो किसी को बोल नहीं सकता अपनी कहानी. एक 23-year-old है जो स्ट्रगल कर रहा है कॉम्पिटेटिव एग्जाम क्लियर करने के लिए, उसके सारे दोस्तों ने क्लियर कर लिए. एक 27 साल का लड़का है जो ऑफिस में इतना अब्यूज किया जाता है कि वो 13-14 घंटे बैठ के काम कर रहा है, 2-2 घंटे एक साइड कम्यूट करके घर पहुंचता है. एक है, एक 30-year-old है, सन इज डीपली बरीड इन डेट. Another 35-year-old who's an entrepreneur who's struggling to get a break, who's struggling to close a deal, and घर से pressure उसके पीछे है. A 40-year-old who's struggling to find a woman who would marry him. A 50-year-old man who spent all his life for his family and is feeling empty inside. And a 70-year-old man dependent on his son to give him spending money. These are all stories of men that I know. These are all friends, family, and members. They are not animals, right? They are not the toxic, masculine, comical character that is easy to identify them with. It's disappointing that it is that way, right? The Their own inability to master their universe takes a toll on them. They lose hope. A lot of them struggle with alcohol, some with porn addiction, some with struggles with panic attacks and anxiety. And most of them do not know what is happening to them. Most of them don't know how to express it to somebody. Most of them don't want to express it to somebody because it's a sign of weakness somewhere, right? And having been through some of the journeys, I understand where a lot of these people, a lot of these men really come from. I'm my parents' oldest. I have two younger sisters. एक 3.5 साल में से छोटी है, एक 5 साल छोटी है. Both of them, I love both of them. I would do go to the ends of the world for the both of them for sure, right? But here is my story. 12 साल की उम्र में एक सेपरेट कमरा दिया गया है, बैठ के पढ़ो, right? Dad was a bus driver, mom stayed at home, right? My parents would have never said this, but somewhere inside I knew कि बेटा ही रास्ता है घर का सिचुएशन बदलने के लिए, राइट? वो उन्होंने कभी नहीं बताया, पेरेंट्स ने कभी नहीं बताया, बट एवरी पासिंग रिलेटिव वुड से समथिंग लाइक a Malayalam version of this, but बेटा तुम्हारी जिंदगी बदल देगा in to the parents, right? uh, I grew up with this very deep sense of responsibility that I had to take care of my sisters and family no matter what, right? Everything that I took, I ensured that I de-risked to ensure that ये कभी affect नहीं होता. Uh, कहीं भी हो मैं नेचुरली लीड ले लेता हूँ, रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी मैं अपने सर पे ले लेता हूँ बहुत सारा. बीट वर्क, वर्किंग फॉर 13-14 आवर्स वाज लाइक अ नॉर्मल थिंग दैट हैपेंस थ्रू द डे, राइट? फुटबॉल खेलता हूँ तो मैं डिफेंस करता हूँ क्योंकि आई विल इंश्योर दैट वो गोल मेरे थ्रू नहीं जाएगा, राइट? सो आई टू द एक्सटेंट ऑफ पुटिंग माई सेल्फ फॉरवर्ड. इन अ वे रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी वाज अ कैरेक्टर फ्लॉ, right? I'm constantly pushing myself, putting myself in these circumstances. There was a time when क्रेडिट कार्ड कलेक्ट करने वाले नॉक कर रहे हैं डोर पे. सिबिल स्कोर 530 था. कभी लैंडलॉर्ड का केयरटेकर आ रहा है, बेल बजा रहा है, और मैं ब्लैंकेट के नीचे अपने आप को छुपा के बैठ गया, बिकॉज पैसे नहीं थे देने के लिए, राइट? एक what do you call, a constant sense of panic and fear was part of my inner reality, and reflecting back, it was always since childhood that I'd realized कि ये था, but मैं कभी किसी को बोल नहीं पाया क्योंकि कोई लैंग्वेज नहीं था, वो समझ में भी नहीं आया, एंड वो एक्सप्रेशन ऑफ वीकनेस, expression of vulnerability was never part of the story. And even if you tell somebody, कौन कहता है कि मतलब यहाँ है, सब कहते हैं ये ठीक है, चलो आगे बढ़ो। uh, ऐसा नहीं है कि you had role models who would express this, right? My dad never cribbed, although he got angry a lot, right? But you know, when your parent gets angry, you only fear them. You at a young age, you never understand them, right? You don't know why they are what they are, where they come from. You form a kind of fear for them. For the longest time, I was afraid of my dad, but at some point, I realized, and that's a different story on its own, that he is who he is. He's done a significant amount of effort working 12-hour, 14-hour, 15-hour days, in the 50-degree heat of the Dubai, driving a bus with no AC, and slogging to get the money home, right? As a single breadwinner. I mean, तो मेरा वही पॉइंट था कि मैं क्यों फिर करूं? Why should my life be any different, right? एक पॉइंट था अराउंड अ फ्यू इयर्स बैक, सिवियर ये स्ट्रेस बिल्डअप होके माय नेक couldn't move for weeks. I was stuck, and सर ऐसा था कि फटने वाला है, right? And again, no understanding of why this is happening. I would get angry. I made a bunch of bad moral judgments and work judgments, uh, and a constant sense of यार ये खत्म हो जाए बस, राइट? कहीं भाग जाऊं, बट नो चॉइस, राइट? देयर इज नो चॉइस कि बेटा है, रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, एंड यू नीड टू मैच अप, एंड यू सो कॉन्स्टेंटली पुशिंग. I'm happy that today I can say that I'm completely out of it, to the extent that आज के डेट में जैसे दर्शन मेंशन कि आई एम काम, अभी रिसेंटली मैं प्रेशर लेना भूल गया हूँ, राइट? अब मैं सीख रहा हूँ वापस कि प्रेशर कैसे लेना है, because that's also important sometimes, right? To keep pushing yourself. You don't want to be in a state where you're not pushing yourself. The See, again, like I said, right, I love my family, period. Nobody can take that away from me. I'm grateful. I go, if I had this opportunity to go back, I would do it again for them, and I would try harder, right? uh, Nietzsche, this famous philosopher, European philosopher, he said one thing. It's this beautiful idea. It's called amor fati. I don't know if I'm spelling it right. AMORFATI. It basically says love your fate, right? Um, and I love mine. Right? I'm happy. If I had to do this journey all over again, I would do the same thing. Uh, Now, what does this mean for the larger story, right? What we are here for? I spent the last 5 years trying to reflect on this idea that what does it mean to be a man? Is it to be this angry young man? Is that the identity? Is it about strength? Is it about acquiring things? Is it about reaching the top? Uh, what does an ideal man look like? Or does an ideal man look like Ram? Um, does the ideal man look like Jesus? Who does the ideal man look like? The answers that I found were very interesting, right? The the fact is that today there is no definite single definition, right? In a Bengali family, a successful man is somebody who has a PhD and who sings, who can walk around with a guitar and sing randomly at beck and call. In a Bania family, it is that you at 21, if you're not doing business and if you're doing a job, it's a complete mockery of your the family and the capabilities and things that have been given to you. In Kerala, it is that if you're not going to the Gulf, which is basically Dubai and the places like that, you're not doing anything great. If you're doing, if you, even if you're earning a 60, 70 lakh salary in India, um, if you're not in the Gulf, people don't give you that kind of a respect, right? Each culture in itself has these different identities, and kind of things kind of evolve from there. And so, yes, right, there are distinct standards in each culture also, that is not standard across cultures, of what it means to be a good man. Uh, See, from all of this, I had come to this conclusion, and I call this the tragedy of the Indian man. Right, the Indian man is set up to be, क्या कहते हैं, एक एस्पिरेशनल कंपस है, दैट अच्छा ये रास्ता बनाएगा आगे, हमारे लिए, पूरे घर के लिए, ये स्टेटस बढ़ाएगा, ये कमा के लेके आएगा, ये that that's a core driving force, right? Women have a different thing on their own, but this is what the man's expectation, the imposed expectation on a man or a boy, right? uh, to the extent that it's very interesting, like I told you, right, 12 साल की उम्र में एक सेपरेट कमरा मिला, चार लोग बाकी एक कमरे में है, मुझे एक कमरा मिला, टेबल मिला, पढ़ने के लिए पढ़ो, right? It's also the story of a lot of people, right? To the extent that what happens eventually is that these boys or men are so coddled, or coddled in the sense that मतलब उनको इतना सॉफ्ट कर दिया है कि वो एक प्लेट उठा के वॉश बेसिन में नहीं रख सकते, कपड़े नहीं धो सकते, खाना खुद से बना नहीं सकते, एंड इंक्रीजिंगली टुडे एक लड़की से बात भी नहीं कर पाता, right? A lot of boys and men have become like this. Parents push them to study, 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 sports, sports और कॉमर्स, क्या कॉमर्स पे जाना मतलब तुम खराब स्टूडेंट हो, राइट? तो साइंस पे पुश करो. स्कूल्स डोंट अंडरस्टैंड देम. ऑफिसेस बर्डन कर देते हैं क्योंकि लड़का है, करेगा, राइट? Somewhere when I reflected on all of this, the backstory, now this looks like a great backstory for uh, creating a potential, क्या कहते हैं, रणबीर कपूर का एनिमल, ठीक है? वो एक कॉमिकल मेनेसिंग एनिमल है, ठीक है, एक टॉक्सिक मेल एनिमल. ये all see, from those initial emotional motivations to this, uh, it is natural to, it is natural, or I don't know if it's natural to, should I say it's natural, but it's simple to jump from this point of where their emotional motivations are to how their expressions of who they are, how it really forms. And this is a story of a lot of men. You can always say brothers, friends. You can always start seeing some of these patterns, right? Where they come from, just from these stories. And these are the stories that I reflected on and observed and said that, why are the way they why are they the way they are. एक ऑब्वियस क्वेश्चन था जो मेरे लिए ये सब रिफ्लेक्ट करने के बाद आया कि डू दे वांट टू बी लाइक दिस, or is there something more to this, right? Now I'm going to, now this was the first part of this story where I'm just setting the context. What does it mean to be an Indian man? What does their life look like? How are they treated when they go into the world? What are the choices that they're making, and why are they making those choices? This should give some context to why are they making those choices, right? There is a lot more under the what do you call, the radar, that we're not seeing, and I wanted to reflect on with this group, think about some of these things, and let me take you through a few of my insights. This is a very interesting data point, right? Which is fact. The average Indian household is 5 log. Okay, this is census data, and the fun fact is that there was only one person working. 1.34 billion people. Out of that, only 872 are working age. Out of that, only some 450 million people odd are in the workforce doing work, right? 80% of them are men. There are 95 million women who work. right? Most of these women who work also come in from rural backgrounds, mostly, right? Because खेत में काम कर रहे हैं, किसी के लिए मेड बन के काम कर रहे हैं, and things like that. What do you call, manufacturing employs a lot of women. It's not in the fancy offices and places like that that a lot of us come from, that most of the women also are. It's mostly men for a reason, right? Now, imagine this small group of 430 million are supporting a group of four times that population, right? China low, US low, सबका उल्टा है. China is almost 70% of people are working, including women, right? Working age population is 70%, 80% are working. 60% of women are working within within their working age populations. US may be almost same story. Uh, the Indian man generally, when you look at these numbers, seem overly burdened to the extent that there is no government support. एक मेडिकल बिल आ गया, कोई नहीं है देखने के लिए. There are no fail-safe mechanisms of government support. And yes, women are doing unpaid labor, but there is a reason for it. And I think the way our society is structured is significantly against both men and women. It is not just women, right? Somehow the families then have no choice but to treat the earning man as God. It just becomes a natural conclusion that हाँ ठीक है यही होना है चलो यही करते हैं, right? Let me take you to another idea, right? Now I want to take maybe a few questions quickly and ask you this question, right? What happens when you're angry? I'm happy to take some quick pointers and quick thoughts on this. So if anybody wants to share, they can unmute and tell me.
Heavy breathing,
ठीक
fogging
है?
in mind, no
Hmm.
clarity of thoughts.
Hmm. Perfect. Anybody else?
Feeling angry.
Yeah. सही है. बिल्कुल धोनी को भी वही होता है, right? I mean, there's a reason why some of these things are reality, right? So, let me tell you this interesting scientific fact. There is this hormone called ghrelin. Ghrelin spikes for around 15 minutes in your body uh, when you're hungry. And what we are tuned to do is whenever we get that trigger, go and eat something. But the fun fact is that वो 15 मिनट बाद ना वो ग्रेलिन कम हो जाता है. इफ यू डोंट नोटिस योर हंगर, वो हंगर भी चला जाता है. बट जब when you have the hunger, you behave very differently. And there's a reason for this, right? I mean, there's a reason I'm saying this. I'm talking about hunger and not talking about masculinity or men or anything. Testosterone. Uh, Here is an interesting question for everybody. Again, please feel free to interact. Given a boost of testosterone, what happens to each of these men? Somebody wants to quickly give me a thought? If you know the answer, please don't say, but thoughts? There's a monk on the left and there's a soldier on the right. What happens if you give a testosterone boost to both of them? Okay. Looks like people are too engrossed in the topic and ठीक है.
I guess
Yeah,
Arun Sailesh here. So I
yeah,
guess
Shailesh, बताओ.
so I guess the energy levels are very high when your
Hmm.
testosterone is like it gives a boost. That's what I see, and I think the two pictures represent, or what I could
Hmm.
understand is that the monk is trying to balance that energy in terms of meditating, and the soldier is probably using it for his military action. So that's how I see those two pictures.
Okay, perfect. For the sake of time, let me summarize this, right? Now, before that, let me give you a context. Testosterone, there is 7 to 8x more testosterone in a man's body. Uh, and the research, what it says, is this. Usually लोग क्या कहते हैं कि एग्रेशन बढ़ जाता है, टेस्टोस्टेरोन ज्यादा है तो वो अटैक करने लग जाते हैं, ज्यादा गुस्सा होने लग जाते हैं, things like that. But there is an interesting insight that's come out of just understanding testosterone, right? The boost of testosterone makes the monk go out and do more good things. And the boost of testosterone for the soldier makes the soldier goes out for more kills. Why is that? Testosterone is basically a status hormone, right? Now, what does the status hormone say? Here is an idea, right? What it basically does is, if there are existing behaviors, it amplifies it. For example, in the monk's cultural environment, the highest status thing is when your highest status guy is doing the most good things, is somebody that everybody goes to for answers. And so you end up optimizing, and all the monks end up optimizing to reach that higher status within that hierarchy, right? So maintaining a positive reputation to that extent within that society ensures that they get a higher social standing. Now, this is reflected a lot in our work environments, right? Whoever achieves the higher target goals gets a higher status standing. And then to the extent that there's a funny thing that happens with testosterone. It drives motivation and focus. Men who win have higher testosterone and higher performance. Men who lose, and this is proven in sport, right? There's a lot of research backing this, that it is a reverse for men who lose. The immediate effect is on your motivation, your ability to focus, your ability to think. This this is an interesting insight when I started thinking, right? When you see people say, "Oh, boys don't cry" and things like that. One of the key reasons why this is crying is seen as a low status behavior. You do not want to be seen weak. You do not want to be seen out of control. For families, the head of a family, it is important that the rest of the family feels a sense of, one of the responsibility of a head of a family or a provider is to give a sense of security, a sense of certainty that the world is going to be fine. And the father takes on that role, right? When you go out into the world and come back every day, you're establishing it to your children, family, etc. And if you break down and cry in front of them, right, it doesn't help. It doesn't help anybody. It makes the rest of us in the family feel out of control, less powerful, weak. And you do not want that, right? And in a family, the breadwinner in the household is the highest status person. Now, there is this discussion point, right? Where do you see that these, what could this say about men's states of minds and behaviors from your real world and real environment? Do you see this somewhere connecting through? And I'm open to get some perspectives on this, right? That if I'm wrong, or if you see it differently, also you can state your position. What do you think? Do you see these behaviors kind of building up into realities, positive or negative? Feel free to unmute and give me some thoughts.
I have I have some thoughts. Firstly, thank you so
Sure,
much. It's
please.
been wonderful. Um, so I think what you're trying to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that these are the reasons why men behave the way they do, or why the context of the society has been set in such a manner where they have this responsibility and therefore they need to act in a certain manner.
Hmm.
Um, I'm gonna I'm gonna throw the question back at you where I'm saying with that understanding, are we able to open that up for the man, saying that, okay, we know you're responsible, you're the breadwinner, you are the North Star, the guiding light for this entire family, but you are also allowed to have your emotions. You're also allowed to cry because we are also secure and safe and sufficient in ourselves. I don't know if that makes sense. Oh,
I think
did
it's
I steal
fair.
your?
It's a fair point. I think today I have the certain amount of confidence and strength to come out and talk about my vulnerabilities, but I've mastered it, right? Uh, Other men would listen to me because I mastered it. So there is a way that you need to. So what I'm proposing, and in the next slide, I'll come to that idea, right? And I'll take and the next few slides, I'm just going to talk about specifically these things. But I wanted to close some of these key points, right? So again, research-based fact is that men approach emotional well-being very differently, right? They like concrete action. So I've gone to 4 therapists, right? The 4th therapist just fit with me, and he would give me specific ideas. He would say, go out, try this book out, right? Read this book, come back. He would say, try this action. He said, try and journal your thoughts, come back. If you're feeling a sense of losing control in the night, write down the things that you want to do in the next day and come back. When I started doing all of it and I started feeling, okay, I'm getting control, right? When I started executing what he said, uh, and I couldn't connect with the other few because somehow, there were 2 women and 1 man, and then the fourth therapist was a man, right? The others couldn't get me, right? When I'm speaking to them, it just felt like, yaar, main, say, I don't know if there's a better word, बकर कर रहा हूँ, right? बक रहा हूँ बस, उसका कोई क्या कहते हैं, रिजल्ट नहीं दिख रहा है, right? And this is why, somewhere from personal experience, they to engage with men, you need to change the environment. You cannot sit with them on a couch and start having a conversation with them, and a lot of them will just not engage. And that's my experience, right? So some of the best conversations that I've had was on the football court after a match, or a basketball court after a match, right? People just start opening up. और अ, दारू पे बैठे हैं, ठीक है, 2 पैग अंदर है, तो खुल जाता है इंसान, राइट? एंड खुल के ऐसी ऐसी चीजें बोल देगा कि भाई, मैंने एक दिन फिनाइल मुंह में डाल दिया और फिर थूक दिया, क्योंकि दिमाग में था कि भाई ये तो मैं नहीं हूं, राइट? This is better. Now, I mean, to be able to open up like that requires a different context. It's not easy to express that. Then I said, bhai, great, you came out of this, and that's you. Now when that reinforcement comes in, then वो conversation बदल जाता है, right? So some of the context setting around men, and when you have to handle conversation, needs to be different from uh, for most men, right? There are men who are comfortable. Maybe, I was fortunate enough to be a little more articulate, use words better, but I was not like this for most of my life. But today I'm different, right? See, this is how I'd reframe mental health. I wouldn't call it mental health when I'm talking to men. I would say mental fortitude. It's a slightly different ballgame, right? Uh, I don't use health because somewhere मुझे लगता है कि health means sickness or weakness, right? The testosterone-addled man would prefer to operate from a position of strength. They like going and taking advice with people who are higher up the level than them, right? And take inputs and guidance and things like that. They are okay with, when you're playing a game of football, they would engage because high levels of testosterone, they're more open, they engage in conversations. Uh, the nature of conversations to have with men, or how you approach men, has to be slightly different from generally how you engage with men, right? So before going to signs of distress, I want to talk, about, as women, I think one of the things that happen in general is uh, women tend to be more emotional, and that's a matter of fact. There is a lot of hormonal changes like testosterone for men. The hormonal changes for women are up and down, and changes and varies all through their life, right? And it and for a person who's not as articulate in front of you, so there is this interesting, again, research-based fact that the language centers in your mind, in your brain, of men and women develop differently. Men's language centers are not developed as well as women. Women develop the language centers early, girls develop it early, and they acquire language. So you see young girls who would speak much better, much more fluently than boys do. And there's a reason for it, right? Which means that eventually you don't build up the behavior to be able to articulate well enough. You tend to do things like, and kids that cannot speak, if you notice, they express in anger, be it girls or boys, both, right? So if boys, more so on an average, don't have the ability to articulate as well, and then they express in anger. And it evolves as behaviors later into life stages also, right? So somewhere, engaging with men, it's important not to dramatize the situations, not to probe too much. For them, it's important that you mobilize action, right? Emotional pressure exert करोगे तो वो shut down कर देते हैं. You need to be more supportive with them and create spaces where they can regain control of their life, right? They want to be masters of their universe, and it's about helping them become the masters of their universe, right? So method number one, right? I'm here to talk, but बैठना है, ठीक है, चलो बैठते हैं, ठीक है, don't worry about it, I'm with you. Create comfortable settings for them, right? आमने सामने बैठोगे तो एक सेंस, एक confrontational sense आता है. Instead, go with them for a walk, drive with them, right? Do something else. Let them be in their state of mind, and in that flow, they'll come back to you and open with you. Help them break larger issues, because ऑफिस में बॉस गाली दे रहा है, अप्रेजल आ रहा है, फायरिंग का कॉन्वर्सेशन चल रहा है, and you are the primary breadwinner, and you have nowhere else that you see that you can go. um, you start just worrying and fear, and when fear clouds your mind, so there is this part of the brain called the amygdala, right? The amygdala is the oldest part of the brain. A rat has the same size of an amygdala that a human brain has. It's the size of an almond. It's around this much, right? So it's now what it does is, when your body is in the state of fear, or feel threatened, it gives a spike of adrenaline and cortisol, and basically what it wants it to, it's like it behaves like a rat. You can't hold it in one place. It'll rush, right? If it feels threatened. Imagine that part of your brain just takes control. Now, when that part of your brain takes control, short-term thinking activates, and you're in an escape mode. The larger, more important part of the human brain's evolution is that 90% of the rest of our brain is a lot more, has a lot more skills and capabilities. And there is this particular part of the brain which is focused on willpower, which is long-term thinking. And when long-term thinking shuts down and short-term thinking takes over, what would happen? Right? You are rushing for the alcohol cabinet. You are rushing for, having that half a kg of biryani or 1 kg of biryani, whatever your poison, right? Uh, Helping them in those moments to take a breath, right? Take one step at a time, stand with them, um, give them the motivation that, भाई तूने ये पहले किया है, तेरे से हो सकता है. Let them recollect what they have been through and what they have already accomplished to get them to that state back of the long-term thinking, right? So it's important to reinforce their competence. Let me say as simple as that. तू कर सकता है, तूने किया है, right? Giving them the space of their process. Very important part of the status being, right? The status being needs to be acknowledged that मैं सही कर रहा हूँ, right? मैं गलत कर रहा हूं तो बताओ, but I am confident, right? So a lot of men just take this confidence on themselves. Yes, there are mistakes also, there is overconfidence also, but it's important to have these, give the respect and build that space, and then have these small steps, take small steps and have these conversations. And when you have these conversations in this kind of a structure where you're not exerting emotional pressure but giving support, you change the conversation for them, right? You change the game for them. And this is one of the key insights that I found, that whenever I have a conversation with a man, they open up, right? these are some of the patterns that I find. I express my vulnerability, but I express it from a position of strength, saying that I have mastered it, and I know that you can also do it, right? But what are you going through? Then they open up, saying that, "Bhai, ye hua, right? Kya karu?" So um, I also had a previous slide about identifying signals of distress, right? Most men just get angry, or they are just emotionally disengaged. I think this is one of these two things will happen. And the more you put that pressure back on that person to open up and talk, the more they pull back, right? And the more you emotionalize it, they will further pull back, and they hide these things, right? Uh, Red flags are definitely that you're immersed in long periods of work and you're not taking care of yourself in any other way, right? Uh, Darkest, most expressions are always that a complete sense of hopelessness and worthlessness. I've heard this from a few people, right? And I've at some points even I've felt that, right? But you wouldn't go and express it just to anybody, right? It is a sense of feeling, and you might just passing put it through. But whenever you hear somebody say that, that is definitely, and some people even mask this in a garb of what you call humor. ह्यूमर की तरह बताएंगे, भाई जिंदगी झंड है, ठीक है. uh, but they will say that often, right? Some people, and it's important to probe it in a little bit of a detail and find out answers. Why do they feel that? Do they feel that consistently? Is that affecting their emotions? There are other questions that you should ask to further get to the root of it, right? I know somebody recently who said कि यार सब कुछ हो गया है, right? Late towards the 50s, फैमिली से सेटल्ड है, घर सेटल्ड है, सब कुछ रेडी है, but I feel completely empty inside, right? I do not know what to do next. This is not what I wanted to do, right? Now, that person is definitely going through something, but the way the person presents is in complete humor, right? So uh, it will be difficult to even judge if that person is actually going through the problem. But all these say something, right? So it's important to just go into those details and don't dramatize it, mobilize, take them out, move around with them, help them find actions. Now the summary of all of this is that I built a small system for myself, right? If you see this image on the right, this is just a piece of pen and paper, right? uh, my testosterone-addled brain had to be put in check because I'm feeling low status, less accomplished than most people around me. And what is the thing that I can do for myself, right? So there was this point around a few years back that I would sit in my seat and just completely sink, right? There's a strong sinking feeling that, bhai, कुछ नहीं होने वाला, सब खत्म हो रहा है, I'm going to get fired tomorrow. And then मेरे घर वालों को कौन देखेगा? All these kind of questions, right? It's just the worst case scenarios just start coming into you. So I devised a simple method of small wins, right? When you are down and out, small wins. So if you see the first two lines, it's completely excess, with very few effort. And the only action I told myself was just get out and move, right? Do 5 minutes an activity every day and nothing else. Go out and walk, go out and do something, right? Uh, First 2 weeks, almost 14 days, 15 days, I couldn't do it. But my commitment to myself was, मैं करूंगा ये, ठीक है? I will mark it, but I'm committed to just marking it. The brain has this tendency to take responsibility, right? And it just automatically starts correcting it. And so, I mean, the idea of small wins is that you need a paper and pen. That's all you need to take control of your life. But you need these small wins. And I think for men especially, this is a powerful tool because it gives you that small wins, that small little dopamine and testosterone boosts that you need in your brain. And that pushes you a little bit forward. There is a version that Dolly has of this. I didn't put it here, but then, yeah, I've managed to convince Dolly also to do this. And I keep talking about this method to everybody that I can because you don't need too much to change your life. You need very little things. Now, I had these talking points about finding happiness. There is this beautiful book was by Arthur Brooks. He teaches happiness in Harvard. I mean, one of the top institutions in the world. Um, People need to be taught happiness is a very interesting thing, right? And this is a whole series of books that is research backed and it talks just about happiness. Now, I've just taken the screenshot, right? A lot of us face this, which is, you feel like you're not doing your job. You feel this deep sense of guilt. You feel less somehow. I'm not successful yet. Arthur proposes these four things that has highest impact on your life, right? Family, friends, faith, and work. Uh, because of we don't have time, and I think I've completely overblown on time. I just leave it to you guys for questions now, and no, let's go from there.
Thank you so much, Arun. I think we didn't realize the time at all. It
Yeah.
was engaging. Thank you. But I want to hear
And
from them about how this felt for you to kind of hear about what you're feeling and going through. We have about 5 minutes for some comments or questions. Women are free to speak too, but I would really like to hear from the men. Anyone? And some videos on would also be nice.
thoughts, questions, guys. Happy to hear you out.
Hi, Arun. It was a
Hi,
good
Amrish.
discussion.
Hey, thanks.
You said you will be discussing, my problem of camera still persists. Uh, so
अरे कोई बात नहीं.
we were discussing last time that you will be telling some key pointers. You said few of the things, but if you can summarize in a minute your things which you have done in last 1.5 years, which you said you will discuss.
Yeah. So, I mean, the last slide was exactly this, right? So there are four things that are important for a balanced life. It was important for me. It was all about work, 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 and work, and saying that because work, I defined my life around work, and because I had to take care of my responsibilities, right? And left every other part of myself empty. One of the first things that I fixed over the last 2 years is I started spending a lot of time with friends, family. I have this open mandate, right? You tell me that you want to meet me, I will come and meet you. You tell me that you want to have a conversation, I'll pick up the phone and talk to you, right? Which is something that a friend of mine had asked once, यार भाई तू इतना काम करेगा कहाँ लेके जाएगा तू मरेगा कोई नहीं आएगा right what is it that you're doing मैंने कहा कि भाई I enjoy work I love work but at that point I didn't think what would happen to me right eventually this सब फटता है right so the four things that you need for balance in life family um, the problem with a lot of people's family is that you don't talk to your family ठीक है वो दिल धड़कने दो वाला story है right you don't talk you are not honest with each other and I think it's important to set some of these rules in your family to sit and just talk right open up the family doesn't want to deny you or reject you and things like that right and you need to set some of these principles and rules and I think coming back to this book of Arthur Brooks right he lays it out beautifully and there is some specific principles on that I'd recommend that you read the book right uh, the second part is friends what type of friends do you need friends who you can talk to right and not about politics you need to be able to talk to them about happiness you need to be able to talk to them about work sorry not even work I'm just saying about faith um, about love you have to be able to talk to them about more deeper things in life there's more to you than just यार अरमानी का चश्मा खरीदा या फिर टर्की छुट्टी पे गए those are not the things that people want at the end of the day there's a deeper human being there right so it's important to have these deeper conversations with your friends and find friends you can have deeper conversations with because those are lifetime relationships मेरे पास ऐसे रिश्ते हैं मैं the founder that I work with we talk to each other saying that यार at 80 we should be able to sit and talk to each other right that's the relationship we are building right the third thing is good quality work right if you're being demeaned at work and dissed at work I mean, that's not the kind of work that you should be doing, right? If you don't feel fulfilled inside at your work, then I mean, that's the worst 8 or 9 hours, 10 hours, whatever you do in the day. Your goal is to find what that intrinsic motivation is and also match it to the external motivation. I'm not saying that paise ke liye kaam mat karo. I am working today, let's say at 1/4 the salary potential that I could earn. It doesn't matter to me, right? Because मैं अपने आप एक पोजीशन पे पहुंचा दिया है, ठीक है, सैलरी इतना मैटर नहीं करता, मेरे को अपने घर वालों का ख्याल रखना है, उसके लिए थोड़ा सा चाहिए, but I need to be fulfilled in what I do. That's as simple and point as that, right? The last key thing, मंदिर जाओ, मस्जिद जाओ, चर्च जाओ, घंटी बजाओ, वापस आओ. Important. You need to have some form of faith in your life. And faith is not the God that you believe in. Faith is the acceptance that there is something larger than you. And when you have a strength of faith, right? I saw very interestingly over the last few months, my dad started changing. And my dad has a problem with alcohol. But every father in Kerala typically has a problem with alcohol. And you hear stories, you'll start listening the same thing, right? He started going to temple very often, suddenly, right? Every Saturday morning. And when I asked him why he was doing it, he said he was doing it for me, right? He started going to this temple. Suddenly, उनको alcohol का bill drop हुआ. मैं ही दे रहा था पैसा उसके लिए. But I was surprised, right? It's a significant transformation. And he feels happier, he sounds happier. Happy, I don't know, but then he sounds better, right? Faith is a very powerful thing, right? You have to find your own version of God, whatever that is. I don't expect you, there might be no scientific basis for God, but the recognition that there is something larger than you. That's the point. That's all there is, right? There are things that are out of your control. I have scientific reasoning that will justify the need to believe in this. But the simple idea is that even neuroscience says that your mind behaves differently on God, right? We have evolved with God, and God has helped us make this civilization the way it is. That we respect each other. We recognize that I am Anu is important to me. Ujjwala is important. Prashika is important. Ambarish is important. Darshan is important. All these people are important because if I go to the middle of a jungle, there is no अरुण राज का कोई मतलब नहीं है, कोई अस्तित्व नहीं है, कोई रीजन नहीं है, कोई वैल्यू नहीं है. एक शेर को मैटर नहीं करता, बट ये एक जूम कॉल में वो मैटर करता है. अरुण राज को वो आइडेंटिटी मिलता है. सो इफ आई डोंट रिस्पेक्ट यू, it's all going to come back to me, right? It's as simple as that. And that respect, that recognition that there is something larger than you, we all need that little space, and that is faith, right? These are the 4 things that I significantly changed in the last 2-3 years of my life. That's reached me to this point that आज मैं pressure लेना जानता नहीं हूँ. Let me put it as simple as that. And I'm trying to relearn how to take that little bit of pressure back into life. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Arun.
Thank
There are
you.
some
Thank you,
more
Arun.
questions in the chat, but it's 12 and I want to close the session. And if you're willing and if the participants are willing to stay post that,
Yeah,
you know,
whoever wants to stick around, I'm happy to kind of take some questions, right? मेरे पास time है तो मैं ठीक हूँ, right? Like I said
thank you,
earlier,
Arun,
right?
for
I'm
doing
happy
this.
to, yeah. Go ahead, Arun.
Thank you for doing this. I think one key takeaway for me is definitely mental fortitude. I think the customization of mental health messages to men is what I'm taking forward. And I love the don't dramatize, mobilize. I think that's key for the customization. Thank you for bringing these, interesting perspectives and insights. And there are lots of thank yous and congratulatory and lovely messages in the chat, which I suggest you do take a look at later. But with that, I'd like to close the session for those who want to stay back and ask questions. I don't have kindly accepted to do that, so we're here for a little bit more. Thank you so much. We do have a feedback form before everyone leaves. If Dolly or Ujjwala can quickly put that in the chat. It's a very short form, just 1 or 2 questions. It will help us to know what more you'd like to hear from us in these sessions. Thank you so much. So while that's happening, I have one question here from Mark. It says, "Hey Raj, when and how did you feel or realize that you have mastered it?" As you say, you feel you have mastered it. The question is to clarify about your realization and how can someone, and the question is to clarify about your realization and how did you know that?
I don't think you can ever master it. I don't think you should say even that you have mastered it, because then फिर वो एक ego बन जाता है कि मैं कर सकता हूँ, right? कभी भी कुछ भी बदल सकता है. I mean, that's why the acceptance and faith in life, right? भगवान का जो विश्वास है वही है कि कभी भी भगवान कुछ भी दे सकता है, जो देता देता है एक्सेप्ट करो, जिंदगी जैसा मिल रहा है, एंड आगे बढ़ो, राइट? आई डोंट गो इनटू लाइफ सेइंग दैट ओ आई हैव मास्टर्ड दिस. आई गो इनटू लाइफ सेइंग दैट भाई जो आएगा देखूंगा, जैसे होगा आई विल डू इट, राइट? I have ensured that. So there is this other book that I would also recommend. It's called Hidden Potential, right? It's about identifying. It's about how do you maximize your own self potential, right? And this is all backed by research. There is this guy called Adam Grant, worth reading about. It's perfect for parents, teachers, managers who want to get the best out of their lives, and also for your individual self. So he talks about this idea called scaffolding. Scaffolding basically means that the support structure जो एक बिल्डिंग बनाने से पहले पिलर्स और उसके स्ट्रक्चर्स बनते हैं, right? You should look at life like that, right? You should put the pillars and structures in place first, and then the rest of the thing, right? And when you put those pillars and structures, it's important to have a supporting family structure. It's important to have the right friends. It's important to have people you can ask advice from, right? And there is a method that Adam Grant proposes about how and who you should consider advice from also. सबसे advice नहीं लेना. You have to ask advice from a person who has your best interests in their heart, right? That is the kind of person, and also skilled more than you, and that person will give you the right kind of advice. Somebody that doesn't have the right thing for you in their mind will not give you, right? So the point is fundamentally that you can never realize, but you have to build a scaffolding structure around you that allows you for succeeding, and you will keep falling. That's the truth of life. I mean, you have to live with that acceptance that गिरोगे. एंड मेरा एक प्रिंसिपल है, मैं अपने आप को कहता हूँ कि अरुण तो गिरेगा, टूट के भागेगा, ठीक है? Simple है वो. It's like a coping mechanism, whatever you want to call it, right? So that gives me a certain amount of power inside, and that makes me get back up. I don't know if that's been helpful.
Thank you, Arun. Mark, I hope that answers your questions. Someone has asked about sending the list of book names that you have suggested. Maybe
Oh
Dolly
yes,
or we could send that over to the
yeah.
participants later. Wonderful. Thank you all so much for being here. I think we definitely looks like we definitely need a follow up to this. This seems to have just scratched the surface for sure, but really, really engaging. Thank you so much, Arun, for your time, and thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you, Arun. Thank you, Anu, and thank you, everyone.